Okay.
Alright.
Okay. That was quite a.
Oh.
That was quite a visit there. Sort of made you feel. What about the natives? They're very wise with words.
Yeah. A lot to think about.
That's why you said, "Let me take everything in stride." Or stride about whatever we talk about. I have to do lots to think about all kinds, even my ADHD mind. But they're smart.
Yeah. Wise.
Very wise. Very wise. If I was wise, I could have put my goddamn seatbelt. And we're in the deep woods.
Certainly are.
And they have 2 generators left that broke down. My God, a lot of traffic.
There's a lot of traffic.
And that's another thing. There's people coming in and out, but there's no animals in the area. Let's just... better not start filming. My God, they got guns. So, what did you learn?
Well, that's a great question. It'll take a long time to answer that question. I wanted to get the perspective of the mothers and grandmothers on what they're doing, and I'm good, thanks. What they're doing and how they hope this will go, and what their objectives are, and what their situation is. So it was a good conversation. We were there for a couple of hours, and we were talking pretty much the whole time. And I guess I have a lot of takeaways. At the end, you heard me sort of summarizing with them, and even me summarizing, it took it several minutes. But I guess the big takeaway for me is that for them, this isn't a protest. This is they're occupying and living on their land, and they're using their land in the way in which they, have the right to use it, and that's the basis on which they're there. And I think, when you put it in that perspective, and you see it that way, then it changes the way you see the issue. It's not a protest so much as it is a question of whether or not we're going to force people away from their shelter and away from their land without their agreement and without consulting them. And that is a very different kind of discussion than to say, assume that the company is in the right, and the company is here doing the company's business on the company land, and here's somebody coming in and protesting. You see the difference in the way you look at those two things, whether it's a home or away game, So even that shift in the paradigm of how you look at these things has pretty significant implications.
I would have loved to put my camera on.
Yeah.
I would have loved it just to put the camera and just... It's like those secret, those circles. They have the circle. They have enemies around the circle and discuss, or people that don't agree on issue. They discuss over a sacred fire. It's over fire, and they're...
One of the tragedies for me in the relationship that we have with the native people is that, and I mean, it's, to me, the responsibility for this is clearly on our side of the street, but is that we don't have a lot of exchanges. I mean, you described her as intelligent or wise. We don't have a lot of exchanges where we get the benefit of that, where we basically have a chance to listen and hear that. And I wish there was, I wish there was a TV show where that happened that, people would want to watch. Sure. I mean, I know there's an Aboriginal Peoples Network, but it just seems to me that in lots of ways, these two communities still don't really talk to each other.
No.
And that's a shame for both sides, right? Both sides are the losers for that.
No, I mean, and they, like when she was speaking, when they were both speaking, they they use, how many times do I got to say that? The words are very, very wise, and they think before speaking.
Yes. And they're speaking from their hearts. They're not just
with emotion.
Yeah. And I mean, I find that quite moving and quite persuasive and quite, that's. I think sometimes we have too much of a scientific or dollars and cents approach, and this is just about numbers. But the important things in our life aren't about numbers, right? They're about much more deeper, fundamental things.
What do you think is going to happen?
Oof, I'm no prophet.
I know they're there for the long haul.
They're going to be there. I think for the winter, it's not going to be an issue, because I don't imagine that the developers have many great plans for doing much with that land in February cold of 30 below, right? No. But when the springtime comes, if this issue hasn't, if people haven't got together and started to talk and worked on some of these things, then they're going to be on a collision course. That'll be something to watch then, and be worried about that.
But when it comes to talking, they don't talk about the environment. They could talk about the environment, but the main bottom line, the other side, is thinking about money.
This is the part that makes me. I have to believe in my life and in my experiences in my job that people are people, and that when they get to talk to each other really, when they take off their masks and they really talk to each other, they find they have much more in common than separates them. But when people are in roles, and when they're playing their role, they're really in two different worlds. They're not even speaking the same language, right? And that makes the chance for an agreement or an understanding very low. When you and I are seeing the same thing, right? We're looking at the same thing, and one of us is seeing traditional land which needs to be protected, and water and security and shelter and nature. That's what they're seeing. And the other person is seeing, this is dollars and cents. This is an opportunity for development and jobs and employment, profits and taxes and return to shareholders. If those are the two things, it's very difficult for us to come to agreement, because we're not looking at the same things. We're not weighing them the same way. And the gap between those two can be bridged, but it requires a lot of goodwill and a lot of effort on both sides. And I think sometimes we're more interested in just winning and confrontation than we are accommodation. So I wish those who are charged with that every success. And if there was something we could do to help, we would. But it's hard to be optimistic when you see how far apart people are sometimes.
And I like the part when she told us in the meeting that the government, by the time the profit rolls in or whatever, this government will be long gone. We're talking about lots of years.
Yeah.
But they're always. And let's forget that. The only reason I'm keeping this camera on, I think, because I missed a spot again. I came here in a car. It was very, very slow, but with this little baby here, I'm just going to keep the camera on until we hit the main road, just to give an idea.
See how fast it is? Yeah.
No, just to give an idea of the people.
Right.
That you heard about these people, but you came here first. You asked me if I knew where it was, and you wanted to see it firsthand. And you saw it firsthand.
Yeah.
And now the media or somebody talks about it, at least you know where it is. When I first hear about this, I thought you just go to Stanley, and it was a couple of miles down outside of Stanley. And oh my God, I said, wow,
Yeah, this is deep woods. There's no question about it. We drove for a long time. Some of that was longer than we needed to.
Yeah, no, that's my fault. Just for yakking away, but
no, but I mean, it's been cut over. You can tell, but it's growing back. It's it's beautiful country. It's like a Christmas card today. But my job, lots of days I'm in my office at my desk, most days, and And that's, by the necessity, that's where that work has to be done lots of times, on the phone to people, looking over reports.
That's why you've been coughing. You're not used to getting out of the office.
That's the cold air in my lungs. It's a whole long-standing thing. But you have to remember, and I sometimes remind myself of this. I've even put it in little presentations before. I have to remind myself, there's a lot more of New Brunswick outside my office than inside my office. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm really working towards. So maybe I should go out and see it and not just spend my time in my little ivory tower, working on what I think is, my big report, when really out here in the real world is where real things are happening. And if what I'm doing isn't connecting to that, then I'm not doing my job. So I have to remind myself of that. Everybody who does something like I do, I think, has to be mindful of that. Otherwise, you can get pulled into the bureaucratic world and always be thinking about things in those terms, and you can miss what's important.
I didn't know McKenna tried to, I knew he tried to put a native in the legislature. I thought that was I was thinking about that a few weeks ago. But they did get one there.
Yes.
But it turned out it wasn't.
That's a really tough, and I asked that question of those two women because I know even inside, I think, the Native community, it's controversial. There's always this feeling that if we participate in the other structures, the structures of the non-Native government, we're agreeing to something, or we're giving up. She said in terms of, well, I'm sovereign. I don't want to be, subjecting myself and entering myself into another place where I'm not. Right? I get that, and on the other side, there are people trying to make an effort to say, well, we need to be more inclusive. We need to bring those things in. But how do those levels of inclusion really lead to real understanding and change, as opposed to just becoming tokenism, right? And that's, people can be well-meaning and have the right people and really want to do the right thing, but still get it wrong, and then actually set back the cause if they haven't thought it all through. And to me, some of that stuff, it just takes. Sometimes I think it's tempting for a government to think, well, we know what the right thing to do is here, so let's just do it, as opposed to waiting and talking. Let's just do the right thing, and that's why we're going to make progress. But what happens when you take action without consultation, without consensus, without agreement, is your initiative can falter. Even if it's the right initiative for the right reasons, with the right persons. When you don't get buy-in, it doesn't work. Just because government thinks something's a good idea and it passes a law, it only works if it takes hold. That's a tricky road there, eh? Yeah. It takes hold in the hearts of the people, right? We're a society because we share certain beliefs and certain values, and that's what makes it work. Not enforcement from government, right? That's not. We're civil to each other, not because we're afraid if we're not, we're going to be arrested and put in jail. We're civil to each other because we agree being civil to each other is the right thing to do. That's why we do it. But
then you said, like she said, that they're trying to destroy the Native culture and all that. And again, I'm bringing up the issue of Anglophone, Francophone school district. Why is it so important to have these two names in there? How come they don't have it a name that everybody feels accepted? Is it just to say, okay, welcome to the little Natives, but you lost the war. Welcome to the Anglophone and Francophone school district. Why is this so important? I don't get it.
It's always a struggle for government. If you name something antiseptically, which is what that is, right? Anglophone school district is just, that's what it is, right? It's just that, and that's almost like a label on a pill bottle, right? Yeah. It doesn't tell you anything past the facts, right? Yeah. When you do it that way, people say, gee, that sounds awfully cold, right? That sounds awfully. And when you try to name it something else, then you have to try to come to an agreement on the name. And that's hard work, right? So I look at a lot of the government buildings we have now, we don't have names for them, right? We just say, well, that's the education building, yeah. Right? Now we could say, let's find someone who we want to honor by naming this building after them, right? We could do that. But then the government says, well, if we do that, It's going to be possible controversy. Going to take a long time. Might cost some money. At the end of it, people might be mad at us. So instead, because there'll be 3 or 4 different names put forward, and that means 1 name wins and 3 lose, right? At the end of that, so what governments end up doing is they end up doing the safe thing, right? And say, well, call it what it is, right? Call it the Anglophone School District. Call it the education building, right? And to me, it's a kind of a missed opportunity. But I also sympathize with government. Is if you try to do something else, people would be mad about that too, right?
Oh yeah, but anyway,
you can't win sometimes.
No, but it's just the way the natives that came a long way.
Well, she touched on something which I really think is true. Sometimes in New Brunswick, we're so conscious of the unique character of the province as an Anglophone, Francophone, bilingual province. We're aware of that. We're conscious of that. We take pride in that. We're trying to manage that. We're aware of the issues around that. And we're trying to get that right. And we're really working hard on getting that right. And in the process of looking at that, sometimes we just completely add the First Nations as an afterthought, right?
Yep.
It's just, and it's not a big population, I get that. But when you look at the history of the settlement here, would it have even been a success if they hadn't had the help of the native population? Like, what are we going to do to make that population do well in their home? But we're sometimes so, and I know there's a separate level of government and all that sort of thing, so they have their own responsibilities there and their own self-government there. But sometimes when we're focused on the English and the French, we just completely, or when we get to the end of the thing about that, we add a paragraph at the end. Yep. Oh yeah, First Nations too, right? Yep. They're not part of the formulation from the beginning, right?
No, I was arrogant myself. I'm from Cook, and my family, my grandmother used to say the word Tawai. La Tawai, la Tawai. I didn't know what Tawai was. I've never seen no natives in Cook. And next thing you know, that's where I found out when I started getting involved. And Tawai means squaw.
Ah.
I know. So then the word squaw, I didn't know this. 2 native girls approached me and told me that the name squaw means beautiful woman.
Huh.
Yes. So we'll get to that. I'm not going to finish it like this there because somebody else take this the wrong way. Okay. This is the main road. It took about 18 minutes. We're going that way.
Yeah.
And Stanley is about 10-15 miles. So
it's interesting to me that a word that you say means beautiful woman, right?
Squaw means beautiful woman until the white man bastardized
we've turned that word into a terrible word.
Terrible word.
That's kind of sad.
And so I remember I had, but I did a video on it, and just but you can't go around and say, hey,
we ruined that word.
Exactly, the white man has ruined that word.
That's a shame.
That word. Okay, so bottom line is this is where it is, and if. And are you going to return?
Well, I mean, I certainly hope at some point too, and if it's felt that would be helpful at some point, I would do that too. But yeah, I mean, I let's put it this way: it's not my home, right? So if someone invited me there, I would certainly go, but I wouldn't just impose myself. It's want to respect whose home that is.
Stay tuned.